Welcome, viewers, to another podcast episode. Here we are again, and this time around, as you will know if you've been at church at all, we begin the annual discussion of finances and giving. And as a Yorkshireman, that's always, a slightly high approach with slight trepidation. That's why 50p's are, so you get a spanner on to price that a Yorkshireman's hand. Little known fact. So yes, we are in this podcast discussing finances and giving. Things.
So we're not doing half an hour of Yorkshireman jokes.
That's all good. I mean, I have a good repertoire. Yeah.
We haven't done a podcast in Yorkshire.
Well, God's own county.
People's Republic of.
Yeah, Socialist Republic of South Yorkshire.
Anyway.
Don't get me started.
That's not. Since we're trying to avoid the subject.
Into that Monty Python, the auction sketch.
Was that the one about how hard they've had it?
Yeah. And he said, "You had tea." When I say tea, you used to have to suck on hot dishcloth.
Yeah.
But I say, don't get me started.
Yeah, that's right.
In one of we joked that there was a guest who came to one of the services who was coming for the first time, who said that they'd been meaning to come for a while. And I said, I think at the beginning, and then they told me this. And then when I sat down and you got them, I was like, they've chosen a giving as their first. What does the church talk about?
Money. Well, only when it comes up. So I think the purpose of this is a bit Q&A, isn't it? So obviously, you usually always talk about giving January. Whenever you listen to this, it's kind of an annual thing to do. There's no perfect time to do it. We have got into the habit of the church of doing it at the start of the year, partly because that's sort of sensible time in terms of our budgeting. Both churches we budget at the end of November, and therefore we sort of talk about it in January. Some years it's a big thing, some years it's a less of a thing because you don't do it big every year. This year we're talking about it a bit more. We've been looking a bit at sort of 2 Corinthians 8 and 9, because those are 3 weeks, those are passages that are all about giving. I've promised that by the end of it we'll have 10 words on giving, which hopefully will be useful.
3 so far.
We've had 3 so far, so you can imagine what the distribution is going forward.
People trying to avoid which one's the fourth Sunday, do you know what I mean?
Yeah. We still got 4. We'll review this week.
Yes, I guess part of one of the issues that gets raised, or one of the issues I think I see from your perspective, to speaking on it in respect before, is the question, I guess, around churches, the perception of churches abuse of it, and things like that, and challenges. I mean, you can see it sometimes, especially with the kind of the age of tele-evangelists and things like that. I mean, from your perspective, how do you engage with that?
I think the answer is like a lot of these issues, the more time you can spend getting your nuance right and making it clear what you're not saying, what you are saying, the better. And most discipleship questions, isn't it? And money's a basic discipleship issue. It's like, you spend your time saying, well, we do mean this and we don't mean that. And here's a misunderstanding that people have had about it. We need to just kind of bottom out and say, it's not that. So you mentioned the kind of the tele-evangelists kind of whole prosperity gospel thing. And there's lots of things that we could say about prosperity gospel. I don't want to do a podcast on that now, maybe another time. But I've summarised it as essentially, I think essentially prosperity gospel says, look, if you give money, you will get more money back.
Yes.
I fully believe that if you give, you will be rewarded, but I'm not prepared to specify that reward is financial. If you send $100 to me, you'll get. This is not a cosmic.
Yes.
This is not a cosmic Ponzi scheme. This is not. Do you know what I mean? Send £50 now, and everyone will send more money to you. That's not. That's a kind of very mechanical thing. It's not. So some of that stuff is quite easy to say. No, it's clearly not that. But you do want to spend the time saying, well, okay, this is what we are asking, this is what we're not. one of the reasons for picking the 2 Corinthians 8 to 9 passages to cover is because Paul is very nuanced in his argument there, because he's talking to a church with which he's not always had the easiest relationship, and so he's very careful to be clear with them when he's commanding and when he's not, when he's advising them, when he's instructing them, when he's saying, look, this is what is really what you have to do, and when he's saying, this is what to think about. And so that's kind of helpful for us. There's always context, so the context of churches. I'm very cautious about going outside the church to ask for money. I think even now, if I was to turn up at someone's door as the vicar wearing a dog collar and say, can I speak to you? I think there's a good proportion of the population, particularly the older population, who assume I was coming to ask them for money.
Yes.
So that's happened quite a lot in the past. And that quite possibly is people's last interaction. So outside the church, we're massively cautious about, and I think rightly about saying, we don't look for funding from one source, we don't refuse it, we don't look for it. Within the church, giving some establishment. It's basically a case of saying, well, okay, as we seek to follow Jesus Christ as Saviour and Lord, we are seeking to follow him wholeheartedly. Wholeheartedly is going to be through every aspect of our life. Every aspect of our life has to include what we do with our money. You can't sort of take it out, just as it has to include our attitude to work, our attitude to the world, our attitude to other human beings, all those kind of things. So we've got to deal with it. The more nuance we can add in, the better. Because we're dealing with some wrong practices, I think, from the past. And I think because money's always a tricky subject, because people get very anxious about it. Because a lot of people do live with a fairly permanent anxiety about their finances. Because I suspect a lot of people live with a sense that they're not really quite sure what's going on. Modern finances are very complex. I don't know, I don't think any of us are young enough for this. There was a time, just about in my memory, or just about in the memory of some people I know, where you got paid weekly, pay packet on a Friday, it was cash.
In physical.
And I remember friends who got literal physical pay packets, paid every week. So
yes, I've never been given physical.
So then you go, right, I've got 120 quid for the next week.
Yes.
And everything's in cash, and that's what I've got. But everything I've got, apart from perhaps my mortgage, is going to be capped. So finances have become more complicated. And I think even people who've probably got quite a lot of money coming in probably aren't really sure where it's all going, or what it's going on, or how it is that at the end of the month you never seem to have any left. And therefore, actually, if I stand at the front and start talking about money, even I don't have to say anything particular for some people to feel the anxiety that money gives them. If people have got less money now than they used to have, there is a sense of anxiety even before you've said anything.
Yes.
Doesn't mean we don't need to talk about it. Doesn't mean to be aware of it.
Because it's fair to say, along with politics and like, one of those kind of taboo subjects.
Yeah, well, I don't care about that, as you know.
Traditionally.
Well, you could argue that from the fact that any issue that is generating a sense of anxiety around it, and a sense of worry or a sense of fear, is how do you...
Yeah, you have to deal with it. And you don't. We know that, don't we? That if you've got something that's causing you anxiety and you ignore it, it generally doesn't reduce the level of anxiety.
To solve the issue.
Generally, we all know that, don't we? Like that thing that we were worried about, that perhaps we didn't realise we were worried about it, but after it's gone and done, we're like, oh, I was quite worried about that.
Yes.
Because suddenly I'm not, and that obviously was this thing. And so money's definitely in that category. And obviously money can be always before you, can't it? If you are struggling for money, if you do feel that sense, then it's a daily thing, because another bit of money goes out of your account.
Yes.
Can I just juggle this so that I'm not overdrawn here, and move some of the money from this account, maybe put more on it. Whatever strategies people pursue, I think we just need to recognise that. You're right, the church hasn't always been fab on this. There's some theological questions around giving. So we just nuance, which is why we've done it over 3 weeks, because that gives us a chance to actually say, right, okay, let's put all these things together. So, the whole point about the 10 words, it's 10 words that all exist and relate to one another. And we want to say, let's have a look at all 10, not, oh, this is the word, and then it's just subsidiary words.
It's the other thing that not often talked about in a positive sense right now, but in terms of, it's one of the things that I like about the Church of England structures, in that there are structures put in place around finances. It doesn't mean the Church of England has been free from financial abuse, but things like the vicar's role is separate and dictated to. If anything changes within that, you have that, and the wardens, and you have financial reporting now. There are AGM, things like that has to be separated. That puts in some checks and balances to show transparency, to limit abuse, to limit that this isn't, and also I think to go, this isn't just church leaders getting up there and lining more of their pockets, because you can't do that.
No, and I think that's one of the, that is one of the advantages we have in a number of directions. So, for those who don't know, every Church of England vicar is paid pretty much the same. There's a very minor reducing variance between dioceses, but every vicar in the Diocese of Derby is paid exactly the same. It's much as they're in a big church, as much as they're in a tiny church, as much as they're urban or rich or wherever they are, they're all getting the same stipend. They'll all get provided with a house, and that comes from the diocese, comes from the centre, and the funding for that comes. But the funding comes from parishes, but not so directly.
Yes.
So each parish is asked for a contribution. Every diocese does it slightly differently, but it's certainly Derby diocese. Every parish is asked for a contribution. The contribution in Derby diocese is based on the number of people who are at church on a Sunday, multiplied by what they call the deprivation index, which is, if you're in a wealthy area, which we are, you pay a bit more, and if you're in a poorer area, you pay a bit less. So a church with 100 people in Duffield, we're paying more than a church with 100 people in, say, well, I'm just careful now, somewhere else that's not as wealthy. Before I get people phoning and saying, what do you mean? I'm being said about my place. And that's fine. And we
because there's fairness. There's and balance, and trying to be generous to one another, sharing and illustrate with one another.
Yeah. So that's a good, as you say, no systems effect, and precise distribution of precise calculations, and you can always try to prove that. But that fact that, yes, you're right, that bluntly, if we have a bad year here financially, I don't need in the immediate term to worry about not getting paid. And also, if we have a bumper year, I don't get paid any more.
Yes.
I'm not directly invested in how we do as a church financially. Of course, it makes a difference, but it's not going to make a difference to my stipend.
Yes.
And in the short term, and that actually is quite freeing, and it does, I think, help you not to feel quite so burdened by the finances of the church. And look, I think it means that everybody should be looked after properly. Curate's slightly different, but still, diocese provides a stipend and a household allowance. And that's a good system. I do think the house in a local area that's owned by the church is a good system, and London is nowhere we can afford to live in Duffield. So, the only reason we live in Duffield is because there's a house provider for us.
Yes.
But that means we're able to be part of the community. Obviously, it's more difficult with, as so many vicars do, have more than one church, and therefore you can only live in one place, you can't live in two. So, but certainly being in our place and being part of the community is quite big. Yeah. That's part of the whole package. So there are good reporting things. So I was sort of hearing about today about slightly different contexts, and therefore I am more difficult situations around finances and I have different expectations, and where the minister is dependent on the congregation very immediately, that's
changes the dynamic.
That changes the dynamic. It's not. It doesn't. It can work.
Yes.
But it is. I think it's a challenging dynamic. So I'm very grateful for the dynamic we have. Even if
yes, and because also within that you have the dynamic of, as with any discipleship issue, the issue that you're reeling with irrespective of it's first a challenge to, I mentioned that, a challenge to you, you've gone through these passages and you go, well, okay, what does what do we do about our personal finances? And therefore it's, which is always the challenging dynamic of when you minister, in the sense of, you've got to talk about something to others that is also impacting.
Yeah, I mean, look, we're very blessed in that, in the sense that I personally, we as a family, and me personally, were encouraged to think about essentially tithing.
Yes.
Come on to that in a minute, if you want, from quite early on. So it was just kind of there, and in a way, it's always just been what we've done.
Yes.
It's like the number has kind of gone up slightly or down, and is it tithing before tax? Is it tithing? I mean, you can argue about all of those things. I'm not too worried about that. But we've basically done that. And I don't sort of stand up and say, well, we're tithing, you should tithe. But we've always found that to be just something that's always there. So we've just, we've always just had a standing order for whatever church we'll be part of at the start of the month.
It's like subscription service.
It's just one of the things. Yeah, it's just one of the things that goes out, and it goes out, and lots of other things go out on the first as well. And of course, there's moments where you think, like you do with all your finance stuff, it's done without that this month.
Yes.
But generally speaking, I'm like, well, no, it's just what you do. So I'm grateful that was part of our discipleship custom from early on, from others people who advised us. She was advised us when we could really afford it, when we were what they used to call dinkies. I think the widest one was the dinks now, which I don't know, that sounds nice, but
you can use some things.
Dinkies?
Dual income, no kids.
So now we were back in the 80s or 90s, we were dinkies because it was no kids yet.
Oh, right.
But that's an assumption, that isn't it?
Yes, there is.
Which is now dinks, double income, no kids.
Oh, Rafton was a scheme spending kids' inheritance.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Yeah,
literally scheme.
So yeah.
And who did that?
It was just the church we were in discipleship. It was just part of that was part of.
Before you were in ministry?
Yeah, it's just sort of 90s, back in the 90s, the last millennium. So that has stayed with us just throughout. We've just worked out the number. And that's been good. And sometimes we've been able to give on top of that for particular things, and sometimes we haven't. And that's just life, So
theology like tithing.
there is, yeah. So
Again,
I mean, as I've said, one has to be a little bit careful because there's a number of reasons why one has to be careful. That passage of 2 Corinthians 8 and 9 never says you must tithe. It's really interesting because he could have done. So, is he assuming that people will roughly tithe? Quite possibly.
But there's plenty of other things that he doesn't assume through in the letter.
Exactly. So I don't think he's certainly not abandoning. I don't think you could read from that passage that Paul says, "Oh, don't bother with the tithe." That's all. I think because he talks about proportioning.
Yes.
And therefore, when you're talking about proportions, essentially about percentages, and therefore it's reasonable. Tithes, the historical distinction, tithes and offerings, the tithe is just sort of responsibility, 10% in offerings, or anything you offer on top, free offerings. What does that mean in the 21st century? What about taxation? So do you tithe before tax or after tax? Because arguably, the stuff that you pay taxes for, some of that would cover stuff that in the past would have been part of the tithe.
Yes.
Because the tithe would have covered poorly.
Yes.
And of course, healthcare, and those things are coming by. So yeah, fine. But to which I probably just fine, I don't really mind. Tithe after tax then. It's not.
Yes.
I think so. I want to be prescriptive and say, right, I want to see your bank market and I want to see that number. Do you know what I mean? We don't do that. Why not? And let me say again, because I'll take every option to say it. I do not. The only people I only know what one person gives in this church. That's something I do not know. Okay, and I don't want to know, and I very, very carefully keep myself away from that information.
Was that something you saw some other people do, or maybe
not knowing?
Yes.
Again, similarly, probably church around the 90s was good. I think you was reflecting on it the other day, actually.
Because you're the first person I've.
Really?
Yeah.
Okay, that's interesting.
Other people might have done. They might.
I do deliberately make quite a big thing of it because I think it's important. Because I don't want anybody. I mean, when I've been preaching on giving, I don't want anyone sitting there thinking he's having a go at me. He's probably having a go at you because I don't know how much you give, so I can't be. And also there are probably, I don't go out my way to upset people, but no, I don't. But at the same time, if something's true, I'm going to find a way of saying it. That has the potential to upset people. Because sometimes, however careful you are, or however careful you may feel you've been, what you've been, there's the saying how things are can feel confronting. I always run the risk of confronting a major donor, but it's okay because I don't know who they are.
Yes.
So I can't be in the situation where I'm thinking, I must say that to that person because they're a major donor, because I don't know who the major donors are.
Yes.
So, so part of this is about sort of. It's funny. I think I was briefly at a church where the minister did well. I think what had happened is that whatever he tried is that a couple of people had made clear to him that they were the major donors and be careful. And it was really difficult for him because he was trying not to let that influence his reactions and interaction with them as their minister. But knowing that, it was quite hard for him not to be influenced by that, one way or the other. So again, that information is not going to help. So why would I have it? And I think people. This goes back to a much earlier question. One of the right words is integrity. One of the 10 words is integrity. Why is that? Well, because actually, I think we need to be able to demonstrate as a church that we operate with integrity with people's money. If we're going to ask people to give generously, which we are, and if we're going to ask people to give sacrificially, which we are, then the converse of that, we can't just say to people, don't worry, you just give the money and we'll sort it out. Don't ask where it's going. Don't ask if we're spending on it. Don't ask how it's kept. Just trust us. There's got to be a element of trust, of course, because otherwise we wouldn't give money. But I think we need to be able to demonstrate that we're acting with integrity. So part of that is who knows where my money's gone? Who does know? Who doesn't know? Where is my financial information safe? Every time I do the budget letter, I say this is what we're spending money on this year. Now I don't go down every line, but I would if people asked me. I'd give more information. But I do say this is where we get the money from, and this is where it goes. Because I think that's really quite important. Now, I know some people probably read the letter and skip over that bit. They're entitled to do that. If they're happy just to trust us, that's fine. But from my perspective, I want to say, look, I want you to have the information. I want you to see where we're at. I want you to see where the money goes. Because actually, I think if we're going to do this together, and we're not talking about small sums of money, are we? I mean, at St Albans, we're talking about, £40 million as annual budget in and out. That's not nothing. I'm sure there are folk who work in various places for whom it is small fry, but it's not small fry for us. And therefore, we need to be able to demonstrate that we've done that right. It's one of the big things Paul talked about in the second half of 2 Corinthians 8 is the integrity around the collection in Jerusalem, that there are these reliable people that you can trust, and they're all involved. And it's not just Paul saying, right, I'll keep the money back, thank you very much. Well, or just even if it wasn't, there's something about not just being honest, but making sure that your process is making clear that you're honest. Do you see what I mean? Because there's people you could give all your money to and you know you can trust them. But I'd still say to them, yeah, but hang on. For your own sake, put some processes in place. Because I'm sure you'd be all right, but that's not a great process. And therefore, there's something about administration in its wider sense about an integrity that's quite important. So, I don't know how we get into any of this, but I think I think that, for me, people are entitled to ask that question. And it's just as much a part of giving as sacrifice and proportionality and generosity and cheerfulness and gift and grace and all those other words that we've talked about.
What people need to, your generous giving is supporting these important ministries, whether it's children's work, evangelism and outreach, discipleship, and all things that
Yeah, and I think the trust comes in that you feel able to trust that they don't have to see that you exactly where you spent every £10. But you are being clear that this is what you're going to do with it in general.
Yeah.
And there's a balance to be had there, but I think that's okay. So I think
that's helpful because I think it's helpful just to, because obviously there's the stuff from the front and also just to be able to hear behind you personally what also goes on. And to think about it more generally, because obviously you only in sermons or in letters, it's a snapshot.
And I think it's funny, I have historically been reticent about saying this is what we do because, it's the time to go and say, and we do that because thankfully someone helped us to do that, and actually we've always been able to do that, and that's never seriously been the point where we've never actually been at the point where we're like, can we afford to do this? So we've been blessed in that, and I'd hate it for someone to hear, well, James is a tither, so he says everybody else must be. There are lots of words around it. Proportions of honor and generosity.
But also to raise it, my point wasn't to weed out what you did, but was to go that this is not an us and them. This is like with all discipleship issues. If you were talking about prayer, that just as much challenges to question your own prayer life as anyone else's.
Yeah, of course.
Just trying to sort of set an important general principle, aren't you?
So
give it to the work of.
Give it to work clubs, and the challenge, because it's challenging, because I think what I like about the tithe is because I think if you ask yourself the question, how much do we earn a month as a family, and how much do we give away? I think most of us would go, oh, okay, that's interesting.
Yeah.
And it might cause us to say, I wonder what I can do about that.
Yes. Yeah. It's a figure that it's enough to come at a cost.
Oh yeah. You can always spend it on something else.
Yes, and enough to, because there's something about it that, I heard someone said, do you give just a little bit?
I don't know many people who would say that they've got so much money that they could give 10% of it away every month and it wouldn't make any difference at all. There are, yes, but there are not many.
Yes.
There are perhaps more people who are actually like that and feel they are.
Yes.
But nevertheless, that's because anyone who's ever earned any money knows that it generally only takes a month for your outgoings to catch up with your income.
Yeah.
Well, it's a bit like, work expense fit the time.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Money shrinks to fit the.
And just so one final thing, where do people go if there's issues that people have in terms of organising their money and running themselves?
We are actually thinking about it. We are wondering whether we might be able to offer just some folk. We've got some folk in the congregation who've got quite a bit of experience.
Training in terms of
because I genuinely think finances are really complicated now.
Yes.
And I'm not sure that we culturally have adjusted to that and taken the time that we need to say, right, actually, you need to think about it in this way because actually it's a lot more complicated than it used to be. Even the fact that you can wave a card around
this thing
and not track what you're spending. Even the fact that you don't get receipts anymore.
Yeah.
So unless you're on a banking app, unless you're diligent.
Well, so there's this new app that's being advertised to me that will tell you all the monthly subscriptions that you have coming out of your account. And they do this advertising. They stop people on the street and they go, how many monthly subscriptions do you have? And they go 4. And they open up the app and they've got 60.
Yeah, and I would actually know.
Well, exactly. Do you know what I mean? And it's like helping some of those areas.
No, it's a way.
Where would people go? Who would they talk to?
Right. So bear with us. You'll have to announcements pending on that.
Yeah, it's something we're looking into as we speak. So, we've got retired bank managers.
Yeah, we can't do
the congregation. That ilk, and we're saying what we could do by way of general sort of financial stewardship principles and things.
Because some of those could be the sources of the anxiety that.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, definitely. Yeah.
Absolutely.
And then, that's perhaps something we need to revisit another time. Actually.
Yeah.
We probably want to draw this to a close. Yeah, well, I think we're heading towards that. But yeah, we can talk some more about that.
Yeah.
That's great.
Yeah.
Thank you.